we come to the first substantive item, which is item number 8, the adoption of the draft Te Punamonga o Tamaki Makaurau Authority Operational Plan and Summary, and Paul Majuri, the chairperson of the Te Punamonga Authority. What I'd like to do to begin with is, apropos the declining of the requests for public input, to ask Phil Wilson just to take us through the process that we now follow, which is today we're being called upon to agree to this paper, this plan going forward for consultation, but it's a consultation process that I think is most important. Normally this matter would go through, this is my fourth chance to watch it go through, and there's no controversy. This year there is obviously an issue that is controversial in some sections of the public, and it's important that the public knows that they have the opportunity to have proper input to express their views on the operational plan. And that involves, as I understand it, and Phil will outline in more detail, a formal process by the Moonga Authority to ask for submissions, to hold formal hearings, and having done that, to bring that feedback back to the governing body, where there'll be a joint governing body meeting. Actually, I think it'll be Finance and Performance, Councillor Simpson, jointly chaired by yourself and the chair of the Te Punamonga Authority, where we go through that feedback and we can have discussions on what that feedback says and whether that requires any change in the operational plan. But I think it's important that everybody understands that this process is there, is in place, and will be followed. So, Phil, if I can just ask you to talk to that, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. So just to recap, the Te Punamonga Authority's a creature of statute. There are obligations both on the authority and on council in that relationship. There has to be an annual operational plan that's before you today in draft for consideration. I'd make the point that it's year 3 of the LTP, and the budget requirement and the detail in it's consistent with the past 2 years. There's no variation on what the budget requirement is in terms of what's provided for in the LTP. Process-wise, to take the Mayor's lead, this process runs concurrently with the annual plan. There is a specific requirement for a summary of the operational plan to be included in the annual plan consultation documents and feed into the engagement process with the public, therefore an opportunity. Alongside that, the plan is, and I might ask the Chair or Lee to talk to it in more detail, the plan is available and the authority considers submissions itself in that regard. So where we are now in the process is quite simple. This is a draft. It's for consultation purposes. The decisions around adoption of it follow in line with the timetable for the annual plan. And therefore there's an opportunity to consider and decide on any changes to the plan. The draft was adopted by the authority on Monday afternoon at its meeting. They, of course, required to be reconstituted for the new term after the election, and that's happened. And the person to my left has been reinstated as chair of the authority, and the membership is now in place. It wasn't possible, obviously, before that could happen to adopt the draft. So that's why it's adopted on Monday and with you today.
Councillor Simpson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have 3 quick questions, 2 for you, Paul, and 1 for you, Phil. First to Paul, have you ever changed, in your experience, has the Te Punamonga Authority ever changed its operational plan as a result of consultation?
I can't give an answer on that part because I just don't know. I have to sit down with the documents, but what I can say is for both the integrated management plan and also for the strategies changes were made. I only know that because that's been the subject of consideration in terms of the material covered in the judicial review proceeding, which I obviously won't be talking about, but just noting that that certainly has come out, that in terms of the submission process, that changes have been made. But we're very happy to come back and confirm the position in relation to the operational plan.
Yeah, maybe I was thinking, I know my own monga better, Ohini so maybe, track maintenance or, stuff like that. I wasn't actually using trees. All right. My second question, if B goes ahead, and I do support B, is will someone from the Te Puna Monga Authority attend something in every area that has a monga? For example, I'm interested in, obviously, from my community's perspective, Ohini Mount Hobson is in my ward. We'll have a consultation around that. Does that mean that someone will be there to support what will happen, the consultation material, as it directly relates to that monga? Not interested in, well, I am interested, but, for my community, that's important to them. Is that how you read that, B?
I've never seen B before.
Your chance to read it while I move on to Mr. Wilson then.
If Councillor, if you, and obviously trying to be constructive and helpful, well, if you're asking me as an individual member of the authority to give a substantive response to commit members of the management team, of which we have 8, on the hoof, I just can't do that. What I would reiterate is what I said to you last week, is that we have our own statutory process that we're going to run. We're also going to have additional events on the Maunga. And as I also confirmed, and acknowledging the point that if folk attend council key events where the Maunga are going to come up, with all the logistics in terms of being covered eye, some notice, and the fact that our staff often have to work in the weekends and the evenings because of their commitment to the kaupapa for these tupuna Maunga, we're more than happy to do that. But I can't on the hoof say that we're going to do whatever B means.
Just think about that. And I will have one final question to you, Phil. Phil Wilson. If the governing body or finance, I'm not sure exactly which, doesn't like the operational plan as a result of feedback from the community, can we direct the Te Puna Monga Authority to change it?
In a word, no. The legislation requires agreement between the two parties. It is not as the chair alluded to, the nature of the relationship is not one where the council can direct the authority.
Okay, I suppose the obvious, probably hasn't arisen yet, but the obvious supplementary to that, how do you deal with a situation where there is an absence of agreement between the two parties, hypothetically, should that arise?
All I could suggest is a process of further dialogue, remembering that the authority has agreed a draft and would need to formally reconsider that draft. And timeframes are such that that would need to happen very quickly because of the requirement to incorporate a summary in Council's draft annual plan. And I think you're all well aware of how time constrained that process is to get through in order that decisions are made before the end of the financial year, in order that budgets are then available downstream. So the answer, Your Worship, is dialogue and quickly.
Yeah, I think the answer is that we don't put the cart before the horse. First of all, we request submissions. We absorb those submissions. We hopefully have a collaborative. I think, Paul, you used the word collaborative. This is not a case of us directing you. You're an independent authority. But we have obligations, I guess, under the legislation as well to meet the interests of the wider public, while acknowledging the ownership and the rights of mana whenua in this regard, as the legislation has given. But the short answer to my own question is we talk about it, we look at what the public has to say. Nobody wants to ignore what the public has to say, and we see if there's grounds for us reaching a common position that satisfies every need. Can I just thank everybody that's spoken? I think what's been really useful out of this debate is that for any listening member of the public, they have a clear perception now that there is a clear process for consultation. And we're obliged to do that on just about everything. And so we should. There'll be people out there with different opinions from our own. Sometimes they're poorly motivated, as Councillor Hills pointed out, but it would be unfair to suggest that everybody that was opposed to the cutting down of exotic trees was motivated by that reason. There are people that are opposed to the cutting down of some very ancient, and I would suggest the word ugly, pine trees at Western Springs, Councillor Coombe, that you wouldn't expect there to be opposition to, but there is, and people naturally don't like to see trees cut down. I think Paul Majuri has put it in context with some trees are being removed, but 75,000 trees are being planted. And I don't think there's any disagreement around that aspect of it. But I think it's beholden to us to go out and listen to people, particularly those that are genuinely motivated, that have a different opinion, and try to take that on board and try to find a way through where you can maximise the level of agreement and support that we get from the community. And actually what we've done today and the resolution that we've finally arrived at is probably achieved that around this table, at least ways I hope so. So look, I just want to make this final point to acknowledge the mana of the Tupuna Authority, to acknowledge that the Act passed ownership to the 13 iwi, and those who have ownership have rights to make decisions, to acknowledge that a huge amount of progress has been made on the Moonga, and to ask some of those who are sharply critical of the TMA to consider that the damage done to the Moonga around the city over the last 150 years has been considerable, but it wasn't done by mana whenua. It was done by those who had authority and decided they could destroy the Moonga, put reservoirs on it, etc. So I look forward to some real progress being made, but just reiterate the point, there are people with genuine views of concern when they see any tree cut down, and rather than reject them as individuals, to try to understand where they're coming from and to find the common ground that may be possible to find so that everybody can get behind the program for the future, and I think we can do that. Right, the resolution is as printed, A and B. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. Okay, carried with one exception.